Here when I make my wellness clients do this practice also as per the holy verses, when they say that whenever you consult any spiritual monk in practice, in private, to make sure to give something as an offering in charity to that spiritual monk or religious scholar or whoever you're taking advice from. They do two mistakes. First is they end up doing this with the intention of seeking blessing from the spiritual monk. He is nobody to bless you. He is just as human as you. Second mistake they do is they start expecting some sort of profit in return from that spiritual monk. You have to do this in obedience of that Almighty, that Creator who has created that spiritual monk, that religious scholar, that religious monk you're consulting, and you as well. It is just in the respect of the holy verses when they say give charity whenever you take advice from them in private. Now you don't have to start worshipping those spiritual monks and religious scholars. This is completely wrong. The Almighty doesn't like it. How can you worship somebody whom He has created? You should have respect for that person. You can have love for that spiritual monk, respect for the spiritual monk, but you cannot worship that spiritual monk. If you give him some charity, it should not be in form of worship. If you give him the charity, it should be a pure exchange of knowledge and advice that you're seeking from him, and not any sort of miracle that you're expecting that spiritual monk or religious scholar will do to you. It is in the obedience of the Almighty, in submission of your wealth to the Almighty and not to the spiritual monk. Do not expect anything in return from whoever you're giving something in charity. This is one thing you imply in your life, and avoid these kind of mistakes and do this exchange of offering of charity and advice. This is auspiciousness in itself. I keep telling my wellness clients, suppose you're staying somewhere, okay, just nearby a house, you come across any religious or spiritual monk. Either you take advice from him or you don't take advice from him. If you're ending up taking any sort of advice from him and if he is solving your query, make sure you give him something in offering, okay, as a charity. And even if he denies, plead him, request him to take that charity, because by doing this you are inviting abundance from the universe, from that Almighty. You're doing him in His respect. So that Creator will give you in return multiplying abundance. Alright. Secondly, even if you don't take advice, if you come across any spiritual monk, suppose you're walking, you're in your way to the office, you met some spiritual monk, stop him, give him something in charity. Even if he says no, request him and give him something in charity in the name of that Almighty who has created the spiritual monk and you, and on whom, on that divine power, that religious scholar or spiritual monk has spent his years studying on that devotion and studying the science of that creation, how the creation is taking place, who has created it. The spiritual monk is not some god, or the spiritual monk doesn't have any power to bless you. The spiritual monk can only harbor good feelings for you. The spiritual monk can teach you, guide you, give you some good advice. That is it. He can connect you to the God, but then he is not the connection that you built between you and your Creator. So do it not to please the spiritual monk or the religious scholar, but give this charity to please that Almighty, that Creator, that divine power on whom the spiritual monk has studied and gained knowledge on. Do we realize that all of us have a quest within us, some in a sublime form, some is very dormant, and some is very, very active. The quest can be in different forms, but there is this quest, there is this hunger within us, there is this curiosity and inquisitiveness within us, even if we are a may-be believer, may-be antagonist, may-be a non-believer, an atheist, or anybody. We all have this thirst, this quest, this hunger within us to know how and what has created us and how everything is working. Spiritual monks and religious scholars are those who invest their life in knowing the Creator, the creation, the belief system, and what exactly the holy verses say, the interpreting those verses and reading about those verses, trying to read the hidden messages, the secret codes in the holy verses, trying to decode every word, every tone of the holy verses. They try to not just interpret what is written, but also what is hidden in those holy verses. They try to decode the tone of the holy verses. For whom? For all of us. As per the holy verses, we have always read, heard from our elders, heard from our fellow friends, our teachers, and even the spiritual preachers that charity is one thing that we should keep practicing. There are two forms of charity, and both of them yields different kind of benefits in our lives. One is the form of charity that you give something to a needy person without expecting anything in return from that person. And there is another form of charity that is a form of exchange. Exchange as in exchange in form of some advice or consultation. That charity is given to the religious and spiritual monks. Spiritual monks and religious monks are those who invest their whole life in gaining knowledge of that supreme power, that creator who has created all of us. He invests and utilizes his time, knowledge, and he spends most of his years, he spends most of his lives in knowing about that creator and his creation. He studies the creation, how everything is working. He has his quest to reach that creator, that quest which lies within all of us. As per the holy verses, whenever you consult them in private, give them something in form of charity. Now, charity does not always involve money, because in earlier times people were not so well off. See, today all of us are in a position where we can afford something or the other in form of monetary terms to give charity to the spiritual monks and the religious monks and the religious scholars, because they are investing their whole life in studying something that is revolving around the creation. So suppose you are consulting some monk for something and the monk is helping you out. In return, give him something in form of charity. Keep in your mind not in form of payment but in form of charity, which is an exchange for that consultation which you are taking from that spiritual monk or some religious scholar or anybody. This gives you abundance in return and gives you profit in return. This is that form of charity which is an exchange of an advice. There is one form of charity we read in the holy verses, that if you give to a needy person, a poor, if you do some charity, that gives you a lot of prosperity and expect nothing in return from that needy person. But here in this case, this is an exchange. This charity here refers to the exchange of knowledge that religious scholar or the religious monk or the spiritual monk has spent most of his years and life in studying and gaining that knowledge about the creator and the creation. When you have spent your life in choosing a lucrative career for yourself, when I read that give them charity when you consult them in private, what I made out of it is that Almighty is all giving, all forgiving, all loving, merciful, all caring, beneficent, and that supreme entity that if he wants, he can fill the lives and the pockets of his creators with everything. Nobody will be in need of anything. But this is the test we all are in. Whenever you consult a spiritual monk, don't be Scrooge. Do not be lazy in your approach. Even if he says, I don't want anything, make sure to give him something in return of his advice. If you meet any spiritual monk in private for any consultation or advice, make sure to give him something in return in form of charity in the name of that Almighty. Even if he says no, try your best that he takes it. Request him, plead to him that he takes it, because if he takes and accepts that charity from you, you don't know the doors of profit that you're opening in your lives. Do you know the act of the exchange of advice between a spiritual monk, a religious monk, and a normal human being who has invested his life in different activities, not in studying the creator and his creation? The exchange of advice and charity that takes place between that person and the spiritual monk who is solving his query and addressing the person's concern is auspiciousness in itself. So do not do the mistake of being lazy or Scrooge at that particular point of time. Offer him something, some charity. Even if he says, no, I don't want to take, insist him, plead to him. You know why? Because by taking the charity, by accepting the offering from you, don't judge the spiritual monk how and what he is. If you are going to him to consult something, make sure that if you have taken the consultation, give him something in return in the form of charity, in the name of that creator who has created you and him as well, and the spiritual, that religious monk, the spiritual scholar has invested his life and most of the years in studying what you and I have not. So make sure you do that, because this yields benefit. The Almighty in return gives you lot of productivity and lot of abundance and profits. Why I am saying this is because this I have experienced doing it myself. Just try it once. Give this kind of charity to the spiritual and religious monks in and around you, whoever. Suppose you are staying somewhere, nearby you come across any religious monk, a spiritual scholar, or say a religious scholar, any sort of monk, give him something. If you take advice, make sure to give him. Even if you are not taking advice, give him something in charity, and not for him. This charity you are not giving it for him. This charity you are giving in respect of that study, of those years he has devoted to study and gain knowledge about the Creator, about the divine power, about the supreme power of which we are not aware. Give him that charity in respect of that, with that intention in your mind that you're doing it in the name, in the obedience of the Almighty, and see the result. While giving the charity, only keep this instruction that the Almighty likes charity and we are doing it in His obedience. The intention should be this. If the intention is that the monk will become very happy and the monk will give us some blessings, this will completely go wrong. We are not doing it for the blessing of the monk. Keep this intention in mind. People at times do charity to spiritual monks and say that, nothing good is happening in my life. No, I expected this and this is not happening. Your expectation here is very much wrong. Do not do it with this intention at all. Who do you think spiritual monks and religious scholars are? Some people start worshipping them, some people start expecting miracles from them, some people starts to believe them, having a blind faith on them, and some simply take advice from them, respect them, give them something as an offering in charity, and then keep a very human to human relationship with them. People always, many of my wellness clients do this mistake. They start expecting miracles as soon as they meet some sort of spiritual monk. Know one thing for sure, the spiritual monk and the religious scholar is not some god or not some miracle maker. He is as much human as you and I are. But there is one very big difference. They are very, very close to the hearts of the Creator, the Almighty. Why? Because they invest major portions of their life, their prime years in studying, in investigating, in knowing, in doing research on the divine power, the supreme creation, the holy verses, the Creator and the creation, the life force that is running everything. So they study God, they try to know God, they give their precious years studying what God wants from us. With this intention, when you make charity to such spiritual monks and religious scholars, it yields benefits and abundance to us. And that abundance and benefits is not given to us by that spiritual monk. It's given to us by that supreme power, that Almighty, that Creator, that divine power on whom the spiritual monk has studied and gained knowledge on. That is it. Keep this intention in mind and practice it and see the changes you have. These are small activities I keep making people practice, especially my wellness clients. I make sure they do these things because when they do this, they have told me themselves the kind of changes that they are experiencing in their lives.